And now for a conversation on redefining power, women shaping the new political agenda. Please welcome María Teresa Kumar, CEO of Voto Latino, and Molly Day, COO of Moms First, with Jemele Hill, a contributor at The Atlantic.
All right, there we go. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, what I know will be a very thoughtful and hopeful conversation, right? Because I think we need a little hope right now. There's, it's easy to get overwhelmed with everything that is in today's news cycle. So I'm hoping these wonderful women will provide us some clarity, some encouragement, and also give us a landscape of what the real issues are. I want both of you to answer kind of this first question. It's a little different. Usually we save this kind of question for the end of a panel when we ask you, okay, predict the future. But I want you guys to kind of do that right now. And I'll start with you, María Teresa. When you think about all the work that you've done up until this point and the work that you're doing right now, what would a headline 10 years from now say about how you're defining democracy right now in this moment?
That's a really good question.
I know the easy stuff first, right?
You didn't get my juices. First of all, thank you so much for The Atlantic for having this conversation. I do think that we're in a moment where we need optimism, and opportunity is actually aplenty. And if you were to ask me what a headline would look like in 10 years from now, I think, well, first of all, I don't speak in headlines, which is really hard. And I recognize that there's, everybody has a whole profession just based on headlines.
So you realize you're in a room full of journalists.
I know, I was like, that's very unfair. But so I think my headline might be 3 sentences long. But no, in all seriousness, when we see where we are in this moment, it's really easy to say that we don't see a future of America because everything seems to be dismantled. And I would actually say that we're in a moment where most voters realize that the status quo wasn't working and that we need to modernize our institutions for the 21st century because we are living on institutions that served America really well in the last century. And so the headline is that a multicultural America came together to redefine our 21st century aspirations together.
That was a pretty damn good headline. Well, thanks. And first, thank you also to The Atlantic and Jemele for being here today. I'm Molly Day. I'm the COO at Moms First. And as we think about hope and what a headline might be, I keep coming back to this belief that the decisions we make today, the policy decisions we make today on the future of paid leave, childcare, these core economic imperatives for families will lay the groundwork for our future democracy and our future success as an economy. And I think what's giving me hope is that, as we look out across the 85 million moms that Moms First represents across this country, every news outlet, every internet meme is telling us that we are so far apart. We are so different from one another, from a trad wife to a girl boss, that there's no common ground. And instead, what I'd say is what we're seeing, María Teresa, you hit on this, there is so much commonality. Motherhood in America is broken. And whether you are a mom who's staying at home or whether you're a mom who's trying to work 80 hours on a factory floor, you know that the system is not delivering for you. And I think that when we bring moms together, they see each other. They find empathy and common ground, and they're not buying it. And so I really believe that moms in particular are going to be that seed that starts to shape a different type of democracy that really delivers for all of us.
That's a really heavy statement to say the concept or the things around motherhood are broken in America. And I sort of want to say on that for a second, Molly, you both of you, the organizations you all represent, have a lot of common shared, values, be it around reproductive justice, expanded healthcare access, civic engagement, voting rights, those kind of things. So how then, Molly, if knowing what you know about motherhood and the way that it has been positioned in this country, it being, broken, how do you see something like that, or how do you get people to see something like that as not just a women's issue, but an issue that we all should care about, regardless of if we're a mother or not?
Thank you. And that's precisely the question that brought our founder, Reshma Saujani, to this issue. So often we hear about motherhood and the challenges that we face with it are personal problems to solve, not economic imperatives. So from day one with our organization, it's been our mission to change the narrative and really paint the picture of why it matters not only for moms and our future, but really for all of us. And so what we saw this last year of moms really coming together in 2024, we knew back in May when they announced the first presidential debate that eggs were expensive. Everything was so expensive. Economy was going to, decide this election. But what we heard from our moms was that childcare was what was on their mind. And in fact, childcare, the rate and the cost of childcare is 2 times the cost of inflation. So we said, this cycle is going to be different. We need a government that's actually going to deliver for moms. And if we don't get this issue at the top of the ticket in the presidential election cycle, nobody's going to deliver on the other side. And so from June on, we ran a national campaign. We got 15,000 moms to petition CNN to ask a question about childcare to the presidential candidates. Now, they talked about their golf game, but that just pissed moms off even more. And then for a few more months, we ran a Get Childcare on the Record campaign with moms across the country writing letters to the editor, going out asking candidates at town halls, and that crescendoed with our founder, Reshma Saujani, asking now President Trump a question at the Economic Club of New York. What would he do on childcare? He did say he would use tariffs to pay for it. And while we were unsatisfied with that answer, what it did was it created a news cycle that lasted a whole week talking about why childcare is so unaffordable and why that matters, not just to moms, but to our economy. We're losing $122 billion every year because of lost productivity, earnings, et cetera. And so for the first time ever, we were able to get both vice presidential candidates and presidential candidates on the record saying we need to do more on childcare. And now they're in office and we're going to hold them to it. But it really took moms coming together, building a news cycle and a narrative that made the case around what's in it for them, but really what's in it for all of us.
And Maria, around those same lines, it feels like whenever we talk about the Latino vote, we are only having one conversation that's about immigration, as opposed to really seeing that some of the issues that are important to Latino voters as something that is intrinsic to all of us and have a great deal to do with the economy, democracy, all those same big tentpole issues. So from your perspective, how can we move past seeing some of these issues as just Latino issues just because there's Latino face on the issue, or because it impacts the Latino community in particular?
So one of the things I often say is that the Latino voter and the Latino person in this country is the canary in the coal mine. Whatever policy is impacting them disproportionately is more of an experiment that's going to basically come back and impact everybody else. What most folks don't know is that the Latino community is young. And when I say young, I'm going to ask you something. If I were to have a plot graph here, the majority of white Americans would be 58 years old. Sure. The majority of Black Americans would be 34, 35 years old. What's the majority age of Latinos in this country? 17. Oh. So we are talking about, when you look at who are the people governing in our Congress, and the average age there on a good day is 64. and you look at who the classroom is in this country, you're talking about close to 2.5 generations of difference of needs and wants. When you talk about reproductive age and motherhood, Latinas are disproportionately of that age on average. They are 31 years old. And so when we're talking about how do we actually address the issues of equity in the workforce or education in our classrooms, if folks are not resourced in the classrooms, they're not going to be the economic engine that our country has decided is key to establishing us in the future. We have right now, because of COVID, one of the largest health disparities in the Latino community because they were disproportionately essential workers. Now, I have a problem with essential worker because I think nothing speaks to caste and class than that term, because essential for whom? And individuals who were essential workers did not have a choice. And disproportionately in the Latino community, they were multi-generational households. So a worker would come in, the grandmother would get infected. The child now, who at the time was probably 10, 11, 12, has a pre-existing condition because of diabetes and the rate of diabetes in the Latino community and asthma, and it goes on, right? There's about 250,000 Latino children that are basically left orphaned because of COVID. They lost a parent, if not two, and no one speaks to it. And so when we talk about whether we're talking about healthcare, whether we're talking about fair wages, whether we're talking about education, whether we're talking about Medicaid, whether we're talking about Social Security, however it is addressed to the Latino community, it impacts all of us. The big headline in 2024 was that there was a vast shift in the Latino community for the Republican Party. We recently came out with voter data matching because you could read a headline, but you really need to understand the data to see what the proclivities really were. Last year, when we met with President Biden, we were very clear. Latinos really care about the economy because they can't pay their rent. They care about abortion. And they care about immigration as it relates to their loved ones. Mm-hmm. The Democratic Party never addressed how to safeguard their loved ones. So all things being equal, they said, well, I'm going to try and give the guy who wrote me a check, COVID check, that wasn't true, right? But had his signature on it, a shot. So they did. As of yesterday, we came out with a poll with the Latino Community Foundation and Voto Latino. We did a poll of 1,000 voters in key battleground states among the Latino community. 71% say that we're on the wrong track. 66% of Latina women say that they care deeply about Medicaid and they care about Social Security. Because as a Latina young woman, if you're 26, 27 years old, you're already a sandwich generation. You are responsible for your children and you're responsible for your parents. So if they don't have Social Security and Medicaid, you have to reconfigure what other job you're going to get, if that makes sense. And so there's so many commonalities among older Americans and young Latinos that if we can have those dialogue, that conversation with this idea of how do we make sure that our children are well educated, because we need them to be with equal access to education, but that we are also protecting entitlement programs because for so many Latinos, that is the retirement package. We're able to be able at the same time reimagine government and moving forward.
Given what those numbers look like in terms of dissatisfaction, which seems to be a trend among pretty much all voters at this point, if you pay attention to what the president's approval ratings are. With that being said, you guys know every election, we commonly hear voters, especially Black and brown voters, who say, you know, you guys only come around when it's election time. You ignore us in between election cycles. You don't speak to our frustrations, our needs, that sort of thing. As you all are representing two groups who are on the ground organizing in this work all the time, what does the political power and the political maneuvering look like for you all in between these election cycles? And Molly, you can start us off.
I think maybe where I'd start is, after the election, so many people came to Moms First and they said, well, what are you going to do, right? The Republicans are put in office. They haven't been friendly for, on these issues traditionally. And we said, we're going to do the exact same thing we would have done if it was President Harris, because frankly, we have yet to deliver the type of childcare we need in this country and the type of paid leave we need in this country. Sure, different tactics, but the same focus and the same energy. And so what we do as a movement, and I like to think part of this is about being a mom-run organization. We have a plan and we're looking for wins. And we're looking to get wins on the board in the here and now because moms are hurting and families are hurting. So for us, we came into this year and we said, moms, we are going hard after the one vehicle in DC that is a priority for the Republicans, which is the tax policy bill. So we are fighting tooth and nail for every last tax policy win we can get for families. We had 25,000 moms petition President Trump since the start of this year saying we need a tax cut for childcare. Now, we're not hanging our hat on federal wins right now, but I think the other piece of it is really around what are we doing in local places, in states, and to bring moms together. And something that matters a lot to all of us, especially in this moment where we're seeing government getting rolled back, is there are states around this country that offer paid leave. And Moms First last year built a tool, Paid Leave AI, taking the best from AI and creating a tool that makes it accessible for people to actually access paid leave from their state. Today, only 2 in 5 people in states that offer paid leave use it. And we know if you're not using that government benefit, no one's going to stick around to fight for it. So we are also really focused on increasing uptake of paid leave in these states, not only for moms, but for dads. And so these are some of the things we really look to in the moment to get wins and real relief to families while we're fighting that longer arc of community building and ultimately, hopefully, federal policies.
So, Molly, can I ask you a quick follow-up? You said 2 in 5 are using it. So that means 3 in 5 are not, right?
3 in 5
So
are not.
what is the disconnect there?
The real disconnect, and we actually did a report with McKinsey and Company just a few months back, but the real disconnect was lack of awareness. So in these states, people just didn't know that they had paid leave available to them. And when you think about in our country today, 1 in 4 mothers go back to work 2 weeks after giving birth.
Oof.
I just want to let that sink in. Raise your hand if you're a mother. I mean, to think about where I was 2 weeks after giving birth to return to work is egregious. And so we have a real education and awareness issue in states. And the one other really interesting thing about this was dads are more eligible for paid leave than moms because men have a higher workforce participation rate, but they are 25% less likely to use it, right? And when we think about the unequal unpaid labor that moms are often doing at home in heterosexual relationships, gosh, if you get dads to take paid leave, to take those 12 weeks to bond with their infant, to learn how to care for their infant, what could that do to actually make caregiving more equal? So that's where we're also looking as what are the wins that we can get and what are the ways that we can change families' lives today and start to really win gender equity, however we can fight for it.
Sure. So, Maria, for your organization, what does this time in between election time look like for you all?
Yeah, so I do think that one of the there's basically, I would say, in the Trump administration, that there's going to be 2 issues and 2 sectors that are actually going to quite benefit from the moment we're living in. One is Bitcoin, and for all the reasons, and I also think that family leave is going to be another one. And if you look at what his trend lines are, he's actually going more left than a lot of the Democrats. And this is an opportunity to secure voters after he's done his big whoopsie, right? And so I would say, I would encourage us to look at what does that mean and what's the underpinning of that? And it's good for them to recognize the need of it. But I do see that of the 2 wins that will benefit certain sectors, one is Bitcoin and the other is family leave. One of the things that we learned with our voter matching files was that the largest growing segment of American voters are non-voters. In 2020, from 2020 to 2024, Latino participation fell by 11%, meaning it went from 27. I'm terrible at math, so don't. But I'm going to tell you the.
Don't worry, you're amongst friends.
I'm like, you're going to add it up. And you're like, that's not 11. You're absolutely right. It went from 27% people who have dropped off to in 2024 to 44%. If we cannot figure out how to talk to American voters about how and why voting matters, and that the institutions change, and that we have a dynamic relationship with policy and a dynamic relationship with our institutions. By the next election, what we're going to see for the very first time in our history, for those who are eligible and registered to vote, will eclipse the actual voter. So the person that is registered and decide not to vote, that whole group, that base, will actually eclipse it. And so you're asking how we're preparing. That just speaks to me as opportunity. That tells me that there is a whole swath of millions of Americans who are saying, again, the status quo is not working for me, and I couldn't see a difference between the two of them, so why bother to celebrate someone who's not meeting me where we are? And so in the last few things that we did with Voto Latino, in the last few months, we realized that the communication gap of information is very real among a young cohort of Latinos in this country. The majority of Latino Americans who are eligible to vote are under the age of 30. Let me repeat that. The majority of Latinos who are eligible to vote are under the age of 30. Most of them have not cast a ballot. That is because they don't have the tools of deciphering information and no one is speaking to them. And so what we have done just initially is first do analysis, really listening. We literally went around the country and just conducted listening tours of trying to better understand folks, understanding what their grievances are, understanding that if their rent is going up and they have to decide whether they get one meal or two meals a day because they have to pay rent from a 22-year-old male, it's very real. And so we have now started creating more information, news that you can use online. And we currently, right before December, we were reaching 4.5 million people a month. We are now reaching closer to 7 million people a month. Our online traffic has grown organically by less than, a little between 6 to 8%, depending on the issue. And it allows us to combat the disinformation. One of the things that no one's covering when people say, well, why are we living this moment? Why can't people see government working? We can talk about the bad opportunity the missed opportunity that the Biden campaign did because they didn't communicate what an incredible agenda he actually had. But then we also have to recognize that there are actual nefarious actors, disproportionately foreign interference, that are getting into our children's feeds, talking to them that America is not as great as it is. And we can have a whole conversation on that. We've actually done tons of studies, worked with other people, really deciphering what are young people consuming and who is targeting them that is trying to infect them not to be proud of this country. That's a different conversation. But I also believe that you as journalists and as the Atlantic magazine, you have such vast information to share to young audiences, to meet them where they are as trusted sources, that I would encourage you to figure out and to work with young people and to work with folks to help disseminate the information that you all have. Because I can tell you that just by minor tweaks that we've done, and we hope to grow it, the fact that we've seen such an organic growth of 8%, it just tells us that there is a hunger from people to really understand the world they're living in so that they can make the best decisions for themselves.
And I like how you frame that as not seeing the number of non-voters as discouragement, but an opportunity. Because I think that's important that we kind of carry that spirit. Okay, before we wrap up, just want to ask you both one last question and try to go as quickly as you can. What's one policy priority you want every candidate in the 2026 midterm elections to take seriously? Maria, I'll start with you.
Making sure that we're safeguarding our election systems. Because if we don't have, thank you, that's the whole kit and caboodle, right? And so right now, Congress came out with the SAVE Act. There's nothing saving about our democracy. As a woman who was, my maiden name was Peterson and now it is Kumar, if I am not able to demonstrate that transition from my birth certificate to my marriage license, I cannot go and vote, right? If that is passed. That would impact 69 million American women. We should be on fire with this because it's one of the few issues that when you poll Democrats, Republicans, and independents, we all deeply believe that every single American who is eligible to vote should cast a ballot freely, unapologetically, and unafraid.
I mean, I have to plus one that. And without that, there's nothing. And, I'm just going to say childcare. We want to see a race to the top on childcare. In the governor's state of the state, over half of them, Republican or Democrat, said childcare was one of their priorities in their state of the state agendas. We need big, bold ideas because, look, women are half the workforce and women can't work without care. We are not ever going to solve gender equity without addressing care. And our country is never going to be globally competitive if we continue to fail to build a structure of care in this country. And so I want to see childcare on every ballot across both sides of the aisle. And I think that the candidates that really put forward a plan on that addresses the costs that American families are facing, $11,000 on average per child annually for care, those are the candidates that are going to win because they're really saying, I see you and I see the system is not working for you and we're going to do something better.
And that's very much a common ground issues that a lot of people can relate to. A big round of applause for both María, Teresa, and also for Molly. We appreciate both of you, all your insight and your thoughts as we head into this midterm cycle. But again, a lot of work to be done in between. I want to thank everybody who's watching online, all of you all in the audience for joining us for On the Future, the Atlantic Festival event. Also want to encourage you all to sign up for more details about the Atlantic Festival taking place in the fall, which is always a great time. Lots of information, lots of great people. You can hear all of my wonderful jokes all over again. It's really outstanding. And just want to remind you as well that there's a reception taking place on the terrace. Make sure that you join us for the evening reception. Thank you again for your participation.
In a city of 8 million stories, one festival will bring them all together.
The next stop is
For 167 years, one voice has shaped America's conversation.
Comprehensive policy may be complicated. It is necessary.
We have to have leaders who say, you know what, let's put some of the politics aside and look at what's best for the country.
That's what we're fighting in all of this, personal freedom.
There's going to be a whole chapter written about this moment that we're all in.
I hope that I can inspire other young girls to do big things.
We have to find the highest common denominator to make progress for the American people and deliver real results.
Now, that conversation finds a new home in New York City. Bringing you the discourse you trust in the city that never sleeps. Thank you all for joining us. We hope today's program was a valuable experience for you. Please take a moment to share your thoughts with us by completing our post-event survey. Your input is very important in helping us shape future programming here at Atlantic Live. Thanks again to all of our speakers and to our underwriters, Elastic and Ogilvy, for their support of the Atlantic's journalism today. For more information or to join us for upcoming events, head to theatlantic.com/live.